Good afternoon, everybody. Glad to see this great turnout. I think this is the best turnout we've ever had. So I said earlier, I think we'll have a Todd family talk every time. Anyway, my name is Russ Kimmel, and I want to welcome you here to this talk by a genuine Todd, and there are several other Todds in the audience. I was the historian for the Maryland Park Service back around 1990 when the state of Maryland acquired this property. They were building North Point State Park. There's a Todd house across the street that's in a curatorship, a family who lives there in exchange for restoring it. And then there's another one down North Point Road, same deal, same family. Anyway, this place, her father, Marty Todd, first showed me around the whole peninsula when it was becoming a state park. This property didn't belong to the state. When I saw it, I thought, I can see what's going to happen. And sure enough, it did. It came into state hands. And a group of locals, the Todds Inheritance, we call ourselves the Friends of Todds Inheritance, now Todds Inheritance Historic Site, Inc., rents it from the state for $1 a year, which I'm told the state has never collected, so we must owe them $20. Anyway, Ruth was not born here or lived here, but she did visit it many times in her life, and she remembers it back when it was still in Todd's hands. And you all must know about the cemetery back here. I think the earliest tombstone is 1717. We know that Todd started buying land up in this area from the Lord Proprietor of Maryland in the 1660s. When they actually established a home here, we're not so sure. Maybe from the start, maybe not. The Todds were very large landholders, both here and Virginia. But at any rate, Todds kept a hold of this property down until the 1970s, when it was bought by a private person who tried to restore it but passed on before he could finish, and the state bought it from his heirs. Now, Ruth used to play here all the time. Did you come for Easter egg hunts and Christmases? And
mostly
like
funerals.
Okay.
My cousins can talk about it.
So I welcome you here, and I want to keep you in mind that the Friends of Todds Inheritance Historic Site is a private, nonprofit 501c3, and we thrive on private donations. So if you have any inclination, please see Linda, the others out there in the kitchen. Okay, without any further ado, I'm going to yield to Ruth.
Thank you, Ross.
You're welcome.
My goodness, what a beautiful turnout. My name is Ruth Todd Boggs. I am a 12th generation here, descended from the original Captain Thomas Todd, who sailed up the bay from Virginia around about 1664. Here today, I'm joined by my cousins Tom Todd and Harriet Todd, her sister Betsy, and honorary Todd, and these two, David Todd and Judy Todd, who my husband in cahoots with them surprised me today. And they have two homes, one in Fort Myers and one in Houston. And I'm still a little discombobulated by seeing them here, so what a treat. As well as other dear friends and friends of Todd's Inheritance here. Whether this is your first time here, your 15th time, we're so glad you're here. And I hope you'll keep coming back. In December, we do have historical Santa. We'll be here on December 2nd. We can talk more about that. Also, we have a beautiful new website, thanks to grant money and to this lady, Linda Taylor, that it's toddsinheritance.org, and it is beautiful. So please do check it out. So today I brought a lot of Todd heirlooms, things that we're very glad to still have in our family. Many of more are on display in what we call the Todd room out there. So I hope you will stay for a tour if you haven't already gone on that. So I was first going to start out with the fancy laser pointer. That again, my topic today will be the Todd women of over 300 years. Then And
You live a long time.
we did very cool, aren't we? I just come and I'm like, a museum piece. So the first women on this land, of course, were Native Americans. There were Paleo Indians here from more than 10,000 years ago. And we have arrowheads, Indian points as they're called now, I believe, that are on display in the hallway. And some of them are 10,000 years old. You're like, how did they really get here? Well, they were nomads, and they would trade. And of course, women were always with them. The Piscataways were the main tribe that were here. And women were extremely important, not only to this tribe, but all Native American tribes. They really were sort of the CEOs of the tribe. They were the movers and shakers. They even chose who was going to be chief. The wives of the chiefs were known as chieftesses or chiefstesses. And plus the women, they were in charge of food, child rearing. When the deer skins would come in, cleaning them to make food, and to make clothing and blankets, do all the beautiful beading work and other adornment. And there's a sharpening stone out in our display, which perhaps they use for not only sharpening these arrowheads and things, but also for being able to sharpen things that would puncture through the deer skin so that they could add stitching and also beading and things along that line. Regarding food preparation, there's a large stone out there that's about yay big, and it's round. It's in what my father's collection, and it's actually a grinding stone for grinding grain. And you could flip it the other way and make it like a rolling pin. Again, all of these came from the lands as they were tilled up, and they would find all sorts of different things. So again, the first women here at Todd's Inheritance. So, here's our motley crew. I think David and Judy, you're in here somewhere. Where are you? You're right there. Uh-oh, my modern technology.
I think I'm looking the other way.
Yeah. Anyway, so Judy and David, yep, you're over there in the corner. Tom and Harriet, were you there at the Williamsburg one? I'm not sure. Can't quite see it. But anyway, this is from a family reunion that we held in 1999 in Williamsburg. And that is near where Thomas Todd settled first when he came from England. It's called Todd's Berry, D-U-R-Y. This home still stands. It's privately owned. My father always said it never looked that good when a Todd owned it. It was just a farmhouse, and it's just beautifully restored now. And actually, one of the dining rooms, the paneling, was used as a replica for one of the taverns in Williamsburg. Again, the decor and all most likely may have been decided upon by the Todd women of the time. Now, so someone requested some ghost stories. So is anyone up for one? All right. Well, I believe this is how we know what Thomas Todd looked like, the original. So, in the 1600s, this was men's fashion. Maybe you've seen it in some of the old movies and period movies at that time. So there was a lady here, just roaming around the grounds, taking photographs just randomly, and she didn't know what she was capturing. And there's a window up on the 3rd floor looking out towards the flagpole. And when she found what she had taken photos of, she gave them to a friend of mine who is the head of the Maryland Ghost and Spirit Society, if you're a believer in spirits and things. And then she gave them to me. So what you'll see here, sure is this working? I don't know that it's working. That here, there's nothing in this window, normal. It would just be black. So here you'll see like stripes kind of and things, and you'll see a face forming right there. And it sounds like Ghostbusters. That would be protoplasm. So the next frame she took, and you can tell from where the sun was that it was the exact same time. There's Captain Thomas Todd.
Oh, yeah.
Looking not too happy that some stranger's walking around his property.
Jeez.
And there again to show the outfit, things along that line, the white collar. So if you feel some goosebumps around here, just say hi. Hi, Thomas Todd. So, one of the ghost stories. Now, we know that the Todds were here in the 1600s. Before we could move a brick in restoration here, we had to do archaeology. And we have a book about this thick of everything down to what nail was put in when. We have a chamber pot, half of the chamber pot. And we have some replicas for sale. And the standard joke is it's always good to serve peas in it then. So, but this does prove that it was put back together by the Maryland archivists that are down in Prince Frederick, Maryland. But again, this was hard. The lives of Todd women were not easy back then, right? No indoor plumbing, no AC, of course. And these would be kept, if you're not familiar with what they are, underneath the bed, usually at nighttime, because nobody wanted to go out to ye old outhouse in the cold and at the night. Servants typically would be the ones charged with emptying them. Dark part of our family's history is we were slave owners. At any time, perhaps from 10 to 35 on the farm. There's not too much documentation about it. But thank goodness, when slavery was abolished, we still needed people to come help us farm. So agents from the different farms would go, not just ours, but many farms would go to Europe, and they would say, hey, you want a better life in America? We'll pay your voyage over, and then you just work the fields for however long to pay it off, and then you can stay, or you can go on your merry way. And that's one of the reasons why in this area, the East Baltimore County, there are so many families that came from descents of German, Polish, Irish, and we have this set up upstairs and that wing above the kitchen as servants' quarters. Now, you'll recognize these two.
Aunt Leona and Uncle Charlie.
That's right, Charlie and Leona Chester, which was Americanized from Tom Chesky. I think Leona is an honorary Todd. She certainly helped raise us, right, Tom? They lived on our grandparents' farm, which became our farm, where we grew up as children. It's over on Bear Creek, across from Spears Point Country Club. I have a funny story about that land later. And then they moved with us to the Eastern Shore in 1966. They came with us. And we built new homes. And I say we, it was my father's family and Tom's father's family. They were brothers. And they lived in the original old farmhouse on that farm. So they were with us forever. I remember sitting on Charlie's lap trying to learn Polish. Well, I don't remember. I just remember out there digging potatoes with him in his garden. Remember that? So, but Leona certainly was a very important part of our family. And, fun fact. Now, I'm going to have some quizzes. Kevin Garrity and Tom Todd. Let some other people answer first. Okay. So, which Todd woman was married to the first Presbyterian pastor in Baltimore? So her name was Elizabeth Todd, and this was online, I don't know that that's really a painting of her, because the period dress is not really of that time. We'll say a reasonable facsimile. And she was married to a Thomas Todd. When he passed away, she married the first Presbyterian pastor in this area. And this was the site of the first Presbyterian service in the Baltimore area in the 1700s. And the Presbyterian Church put this beautiful marker out in our family burial ground as a monument to that happening. Now, she went to England with one of her children for a visit. On the voyage back, very close to here, towards the end of the voyage, she died, as well as the child. They're very, this is the oldest tombstone, if you will, out in our graveyard. And she died, she was only 28 years old. And she, and if you can see, kind of hurt maybe.
Yeah, it didn't show off that TV very well.
This, out there, if you get to go outside, here it's a skull and crossbones. And people, there's local lore, oh, she was a witch. Or, you know, she had a child out of wedlock and she was buried upside down and all this kind of stuff. It's like, no, that was just the style of the day. But that is the oldest gravestone out there. Oh, another fun fact. So, Witch Todd woman was the first Caucasian child born in Baltimore. So her name was Ellen North, of record, shall we say. And she, let me put this over here. One second. So this portrait, interestingly enough, was made by an African-American portrait artist. His name was Joshua Johnson. And this was painted between 1798 and 1800, somewhere around then. And it's part of a current exhibit, actually, in Williamsburg, in one of their art galleries. And the exhibit is called, I Made This, the work of Black American artists and artisans. So if you go to Williamsburg, you might be able to see our relative. And that's where they were doing the research on this portrait and on this painter. Another fun fact.
It was the woman, not the child, that was the first
The
one.
woman, yes. So Witch Todd woman was married at the same time when George Washington was inaugurated. And a big hint, her farm, former farm, is where a large bridge is here in this area. Anybody think of a key? What it's called? Key? No, very close though. Soller's Point. Sarah Sollers was a Todd. And this is on display in the Todd room. This was her wedding fan, as well as the case it came in. I have put this over here. It's very fragile. I shouldn't have probably taken it out of the box, but I couldn't resist. This was her needle case. This is a swatch, the pink of her wedding gown. White wedding gowns didn't come into fashion until Queen Victoria's time. And this was all done in 1796, I believe, or 86. Quote me.
89, I think is what the tag
89?
says.
A lot of time, long time ago. And we also are lucky to have her teapot, again, on display. Now, the Todd women would certainly have been into decorating. This was very much the Williamsburg style, as we tend to think of it. Laurie Zackrell, one of our wonderful volunteers here, does a whole house like this at Christmas time. And it's just glorious. So I hope you'll come in December. And that's in the kitchen, how it may have looked. Another fun fact. So, Witch Todd woman's wedding was the first ever held in the White House. No? Okay. Well, we say Mary Todd Lincoln's not a relative because she was Republican. But we all came from somewhere, you know, very un-PC, but that's always been the standard family joke. But she's not a direct descendant from Todd's in here, a historic site. So it was this beautiful lady.
Oh, she is.
She was Lucy Payne. Her sister was quite famous. Her name was Dolly Madison. And when Lucy Payne's first husband died, and she had children, she came to live at the White House with President Madison and Dolly. And her wedding was the first ever recorded in the White House. Another fun fact. Which Todd woman was married to a Supreme Court justice? It's a trick question. Lucy Payne. Their wedding was the first wedding. And here he is, and he looks like a Todd. Todd, gentlemen, you recognize that type of face. He looks like a Todd. So, moving up to the time of the Battle of Baltimore and the Battle of North Point, Todds have always been very much into fashion. So, this is what the women of Todd's inheritance would have been wearing around the time of the battle. Very much influenced by Josephine, Napoleon Bonaparte's wife. It's the umpire waistline. These little handbags were called ridicules. And an interesting part, too, to think about is, well, not only, they were very into feathers and turbans and all sorts of things. You'll notice buttons. Sewing machines were not invented until the time of the Civil War. So all of these resplendent outfits, the uniforms, they were all, like the red coat uniforms, they were all done by hand, mainly by women. And sunbonnets were also very important. We didn't have SPF back then to protect one's skin from the sun. Another fun fact.
I never does.
Which Todd woman saved her family silver from the British during the invasion of North Point in a very creative way?
Should know that, but I don't remember.
This would be Mary Trotton.
Yeah, Mary Trotton. Very good.
So-
Cabbage.
This is a photograph of Mary Trotton Todd. And one of the Trotton family's gravestones, or two of them, are here and here.
And we have a Trotton watching us online.
Oh, hi, Trotton! I hope I'm saying things correctly. And she, what she did was, when the British were coming, and they were definitely visited the Trotton home, she buried the silver underneath a bunch of cabbage so that they wouldn't find it. When she returned home, she had her silver. And speaking of fashion, this is her handbag. And it is on display. It is beaded. It's not needlepoint. It's beaded front and back. It's in perfect condition. The lining, that fabric is sort of rotted now, but it's on display in the Todd room. Oh, fun fact. Which Todd woman was married to one of the first superintendents of Baltimore County schools. That would be, Sarah Rebecca Todd. And her husband, his nickname was Whiskers. And they lived in the home next door. Here is a portrait of him, something maybe we need to look into to try to acquire for Todd's Inheritance Historic Site. This is a picture of him that's in the Baltimore County Schools Board of Education's large building up on Charles Street. So that was Whiskers. And
So his full name was?
it was another Thomas Bernard Todd.
That's what I
believe.
thought, yeah.
Yeah.
We've got pictures of him at home.
And this was their home, which was right across the street. And as Ross was saying, it's under curatorship by a family who lives there. This is Mary Morrison Todd. She was our great-grandmother. And that's Uncle Ed, your grandfather. And there are so many wonderful recipes. I will put a plug in for this, Todd Family Cookbook. And I think one of hers is my very favorite. And it says, here it is. This is for chocolate caramels. And after you make it, pour it on a large meat platter, let it cool, then beat with a large knife. Beat until your arms gives out. Then let Ed do the beating. So, these are for sale in the gift shop if you're interested. I have more on that later. Now, education, well, I'll get to that in a second. So, these are Mary Morrison's 5 sons. And I have this picture over here of them. It hangs in the hallway normally. So, these are her 5 sons when they were little, and as they grew older. And this is right outside here on the front porch. So, Morris is our grandfather, my grandfather, and Tom's grandfather. And we have Uncle Doug, who never married, Uncle Ridge, who lived in built the Dutch colonial home over here, and Uncle Bernard, and Uncle Ed, who was David's grandfather. So, the Todd women accomplished many things, but one of the best things is that they raised many, many children and were the caregivers in the home. Now this is another picture of Mary Morrison Todd as she got a little older. And as she grew a little older, it's wonderful we have these. Now I do have some pieces of her jewelry. These were cameos that belonged to her. It was very in style, and they may be older. They may have come from some other relatives. And I also have this very sweet let me find it here. It's a small amethyst pendant that has some small little pearls in it. Again, fashion was important, right? The Todd women were also, people were small then. You visited homes? Yes? I'm sorry? Oh, okay, thank you. So they were very small. And so I have some various rings that belong to the Todd family. Some of these were engagement rings. Very small fingers and wonderful heirlooms to have. I will speed this up a bit. So this again is Mary Morrison here with the Chaco hat. And I'll get to another lady who made
What year is this now?
What year? I'm not sure. This is Herb Todd.
Like the 30s.
And my dad, so maybe in the 30s. This looks very much like Aunt Hilda Stratman, doesn't it? But I don't know if it's the right timing. But it certainly looks like her. And this is the same lady, Aunt Hilda and our Uncle Ridge, when they were visiting our home. So, this is Aunt Clara.
Oh,
And you can see that this is right out here. She was the last Todd to live here at Todd's Inheritance Historic Site.
Wow.
I'm not sure, perhaps that's what Uncle John Gorsuch, no, it doesn't look like him, you don't think. Not exactly sure who these other people are, but that's Aunt Clara. And that was her in her older years, sitting at one of the fireplaces in the back. So, might she still like to visit? Up for another ghost story? Okay. I was here again with this lady who is the head of the Maryland Ghost and Spirit Society. We always have a lot of fun when we're here because I'm like a lightning rod. And I can feel spirits, but she can see and hear them. Anyway, and she was taking photographs, and afterwards she sent me this. There's a ghost cat up on the porch. There was not a cat here that day. I guarantee you. And she's like, Ruth, don't you see the lady in the tree looking at the cat? And I'm like, no. The face, hands, shoes. So, if you should believe or see that in there, I don't know why Aunt Clara wouldn't continue to visit here. It's a beautiful place. Another fun fact. What did Todd women do in this very room?
Probably so.
We're
So,
gonna talk about that.
so,
Eat.
Well,
This is the dining room. And this is a picture.
oh, that's not just women.
Not just women. So this is my grandmother Todd, and grandfather Todd. This spitting image of Tom Todd's father, my Uncle Ben, but that is Uncle Doug, a great uncle. So the Todd genes run. So this meat platter is on display. This is originally to the house. Perhaps even this one that very similar, or the one that Mary Morrison was making that fudge on, or caramels, where she needed Uncle Ed to finish the beating. Now, my grandmother Todd's side, this is Leah Zariah Merritt Sparks. And so you got to think of all these places like Merritt Boulevard. They were just farmlands until all the development started happening. Now, the Sparkses were strict Methodists. And back in the day, missionaries would come to the different farms. And this was a fundraiser. It's called Blue Calico by Josiah Wedgwood, and he made this for John Wesleyan. And in the British Museum, or in his home, John Wesley's home, the one that they have is a gallon.
Wow.
And I've always loved this set, and so my grandmother Todd left this to me. And I use it quite often. Leah Zariah Merritt Sparks also started collecting rose medallion. And I have some of this, which I also use when I have friends over. And I say it's like almost 200 years old. They're like, well, I don't want to use it. I'm like, no, let's use it. Let's use it. And this was her and Ben Sparks. Their farm was one of the first ones that became Dundalk. And the house still stands. It's on Liberty Parkway. It's like a Victorian. Yeah. This was her in her later days. And that's my dad. And your dad, Tom. And that was then when they came to my my parents' wedding. So, what Todd Wilden? First words, and I've heard this come out of your mouth, David. That woman could cook. And that's my grandmother, Todd. Mary Melvina Sparks Todd. And that's her with our grandfather Todd. And if you look at Tom Todd's profile, dead ringer, the Todd genes are very Todd genes are very strong, and that's my father. Now, the Todds were always very involved in the Farm Bureau. They needed to do this to be together for community and to enact new standards. So here is my grandfather Todd, my grandmother Todd, Leah Zariah Merritt Sparks, Ben Sparks, Aunt Clara, John Gorsuch, and probably other Todds in there, but I'm not really sure who they are. So, which leads us to a silly fun fact. Who was the Farm Bureau Queen in 1977? This young thing. Just a few years ago. And we did work the farm, women did. And this is funny. I was like in barefoot, and one time I jumped off the mower in order to like clear something out. That Tom saw me do that. That was not pretty.
You know about her, right? Uncle
Oh
Mike
yes, yes,
Sure.
yes, yes. So, my mom Todd loved to entertain, and this was obviously Thanksgiving or Christmas. And these are some of her friends who were visiting, as well as Martha Lynch Todd and our great Aunt Matilda. She once had a bridge party where, for fun, it was St. Patrick's Day, she dyed everything green. No one would eat it. They thought it was bad. It was moldy. I know, from Mama. That was another one of her pretty tables. And this was in Florida. They moved to Florida. Our grandfather had had a lot of strokes, and they moved down there from Baltimore for the health and to be near other family members. You can see the rose medallion back here. That's all of us. Mama, towards the end of her life, she lived at the Tidewater Inn in Easton. She came there from Florida after our grandfather died in order to stay until a home or a room or apartment opened up at a place called the Seaford Manor House. And but then she was like, it costs the same to live here as there, and I'm a lot closer to your farms, in Centerville, Maryland. So she stayed. So many funny things. She would get her breakfast served immediately as soon as she sat down. People would be like, well, why? What is she getting served for? I was here first. Well, she owns the place. And then one time there was a fly was around and she asked for a fly swatter. And the waiter's like, oh, I don't know if we had that kind of cocktail. Being a strict Methodist teetotaler, she thought that was pretty funny. And here she is again. This is with my maternal grandmother. My mother's side all worked at the Point and lived in Dundalk as well. You'll see this beautiful watch that my grandmother always wore. And she loved jewelry. And junk jewelry, especially. She would pile it on. And she was known for her bracelets. You could hear her coming before she got to the door. And one of my dear friends, Beth, in homage to Melody, as we call her, we always wear lots of bracelets. I couldn't today because I have a sore hand. She also wore rouge, and this was one of her compacts. Mother of pearl.
What?
Let me see what other goodies going here. I know we're running a little long, and here she was in front of there wearing her watch that we have. Who is married to a pioneer in the citrus industry? You're allowed. Aunt Winifred. Aunt Winifred. And I love Aunt Winifred. She was, I called her a true Southern belle, because she had this sweet little accent. And one time she was telling me, we were visiting, that she wanted to do something kind of adventurous. And her husband, Edward, will say, now, Winifred, you remember your age.
Oh, don't ever say that to a
And she was
woman.
probably as old as me or younger. But she was so sweet. And there they are in their older days. I'm glad. And what did women, Todd women, many women do over the centuries? Not only for decor, but for fun and for fashion. Well, needlework is the answer, and sewing. So Mary Morrison, this is on display. Normally, oh no, I'm sorry. This picture is on display. That's Mary Trott. So needlework. I brought a sample of the tablecloth. All these tiny little stitches.
I don't know how they didn't go blind.
Yes, more crumbs. So you can imagine how time-consuming it was, but it was a wonderful hobby, and people would come together not only to admire the work, but to do things together. Needlepoint. My grandmother Todd, being the fashion plate that she was, she would needlepoint handbags to match her outfits.
Whole bunch of them.
Yes. Needlepoint, one of the reasons it was so important to have and to get is because it was sturdy. And on the back it looks the same as the front. And so it's like sail canvas almost. And that's why they were so good for seats. And some of these things keep on going. Modern day needlepoint. I made this Christmas belt for my husband, which he wears every year to my, he tolerates me. And a belt, just to know how long these things take, this takes 40 hours to make. So, but it's fun. And it's, again, it's a fashion thing. Todd women were also master knitters. My mother made this for me.
Wow.
Like in the 70s. You can tell. And she also made me, where's her hat? Made hand knitted Barbie clothes. And this one also has its own little pocketbook with a clasp that opens. So it's tiny, tiny stitches.
I bet you put money in it too.
Yes, and samplers were big. And I'm giving these to the Todd house to keep. This was made by Mary Morrison Todd, a great-grandfather who lived, great-grandmother, in 1935, Home Sweet Home. And I also have this one that was made by Leah Zariah Merritt Sparks. If Music Be the Food of Love, Play On. And in 1928. And lastly, this one, I don't know who made this. Could have been a Todd. Could have been from my mother's side. an ochre, but I just think it's so pretty, and I like to leave it here for the house. And that type of craft continues on as well. I made this little sampler for my husband when we got married in 1988. Okay, and now we can go forward. These are some quilts that are upstairs on display on the beds. They belong to Ross's grandmother, who made those for us, and it's a beautiful gift he's given us. So quilting was a big, big thing for Todd women and all women. Caning. This is Mary Morrison's chair. So caning and some of the more integral, yes, this was Russian, then also caning of the lattice type of seats. Mom on Todd, some more of her needlepoint, which is on display. And then, fun fact, who was famous for her painted eggs? That would be my Aunt Jean, Tom's mother. These were made from discontinued postage stamps.
Canceled.
And canceled. And
They
yes,
were-
it also
they were
canceled,
used.
right.
Used.
They had been used.
And I love that one.
Oh, my.
Those are goose eggs.
Harriet sent me all these pictures. Thank you, Harriet. Christmas.
Amazing. It is.
I love this one, Williamsburg. And as you were saying, Harriet was saying, she made it to look like the shape of like a carriage they would have ridden in.
And
with the carriages
it's
in
like,
it, too.
in China it would be rickshaw, but they had two men carrying someone.
Right, and Bruton Parish Church
I
there.
remember the muddy streets.
Yes. And then this one, the fox hunt, with a little fox right here, which is a symbol of the Todd family. Brilliant artist. She also would paint brick doorstops. Two up here, and she was famous. Where? Oh, here. Barbie. Barbie is sitting in here for painting these beautiful baskets.
Oh, wow.
So quite the artist. So, which Todd woman had a Christmas ornament on Jimmy Carter's White House Christmas tree? Bonus. What was it?
Malib.
And what was it?
Oh.
A snowflake. As my mom, and a snowflake. And she must have made thousands of these.
Yeah.
And we have some for sale here. I brought a few with me. Teeny tiny stitches. I have her hooks, her crochet hooks. They're like the size of a
Yeah.
pen.
Yeah. They're small.
And these are some of her original instructions on how to make them. This is Missy, who was one girl with 8 male cousins. She was amazing. She was a buyer for Woodward Lothrop's in D.C., and she was famous for our Todd family reunions. She would wrap all these different family heirlooms, because being the only girl, she got a lot. And we would draw a number, and then whatever number, you got to pick whatever wrap box. Like you thought, oh, good things come in small packages, or you might go for something big, maybe a whole set of china. She was wonderful. And here are some of the gents. My dad is missing, as well as Howard, one of the brothers who passed away young. This is her and Aunt Martha. Now, Aunt Martha was a Lynch of Lynch Point. If those of you are familiar, Martha Avenue. So that was named for her. When her father sold that farm, they named all the streets for her sisters and his daughters. And she's buried outside. So sometimes we women like to mix up the family tree a little bit. So
Baby.
this is my great Aunt Hilda, married to my great Uncle Rich. So this is my dad, and this is Tom, one of the cousins, as well as his lovely wife, Mary Jane. And when my mom passed away, my dad married, as we knew, Aunt Babe. They were all dear friends. And these two are half sisters.
Oh, wow.
So when Dad and Babe married, her name was Babe, when they married, his aunt became his sister-in-law. And his cousins became his nephews. This is Herb Todd and four of the Todd women of my generation. This is one of the newest Todds. This is our daughter-in-law, Sarah. And this is our daughter, Allie. And this is the newest Todd. This is Morgan Midget. They were married last Saturday.
Oh.
And this is our cousin, Beth Midget.
Midgets from North Carolina? Is
Yes.
that right?
Yes, exactly. And family lore alert, who was a Todd woman, maybe, that was married to a county executive, a governor, and a vice president of the United States? Judy Agnew. Now, my dad always said that she was some sort of cousin. I can't find it anywhere when I was doing research for this presentation, but she looks like a Todd woman. So, and my dad always said that she was, so it's kind of like that old adage, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. So I would say, if she looks like a Todd, my dad said she was a Todd, she's probably a Todd. But I don't really know. All right, which Todd woman led the effort to designate the Star-Spangled Banner
Oh, it's out here.
to be our national anthem? Yes, her portrait is out in the Todd room. Now, her name was Ella Holloway, and she descends from the Porter line. She lived in Baltimore, was born in a house next to the Shop Tower, and she was famous for the Shako hats, which supposedly was an homage to the Shop Tower. She was the president of the DAR, and again, started lobbying to make the Star-Spangled Banner our national anthem. So an extraordinary accomplishment of a Todd woman affecting our entire nation. This lady is my favorite story for today. Aunt Matilda.
Yeah.
She was brilliant. And what's really, her parents, Leah and Ben Sparks, were very big on women being educated. This is the early 1900s. That was pretty radical, especially for farm girls. So my grandmother Todd, Elvina, hated school. Hated it. But she's like, you have to get some kind of education. So he sent her to Peabody to learn piano. Siblings were often very different. Aunt Matilda loved school. She went to Goucher, graduated in 1814.
Wow.
This is from the yearbook. And it says, she's my Maverine from Baltimore County, well known to all for her generous beauty. She studies all subjects from physics to math. And when we were young sophomores, she was wife of Bath. So I think there must have been a Greek stage play or
They
something.
did those things.
Now, when she was in college at Goucher, her hot chocolate set is on display, but this was like a little piece of it. Also, as a child, like most children, and probably my grandmother played with her too, a little doll china. A whole set of those. There's that outside. And she worked at the Bureau of Standards in Washington, D.C., and her legacy is she and her research partner developed the standard for Ohm's law, which is a law of capacitance for electricity. Now, she was invited to go to a famous meeting in Brussels. And our great-grandfather, I was like, why didn't you go? Marie Curie was there, which was more than likely not the 27, but 21, because that was all about electrical capacitance. Our great-grandfather said, oh, it's not proper for a lady to travel alone. I didn't have the presence of mind. She died when I was 17 to say, well, why didn't you get somebody to go with you? But it was probably the cost of the voyage. I mean, no airplanes and frequent flyers back then. But had she gone to this one, Albert Einstein, Niels Bohr, as well as Madame Curie. Now, one thing she was invited to, and she did go to, was, excuse me, let me move this around a little bit. She was invited to the White House in 1927 Here's the original invitation. Wow. So in honor of her contribution to science. And here, I have some of her original typed, written research. Just to show her brilliance, just this paragraph boggles my mind. From an analysis of all the data, it is concluded that the unit of capacitance, the microfarad, is the same in these rational laboratories within the limits of accuracy of the measurements and the stability of the mica capacitor tested. This limit is about 1 or 2 parts in 10 to the 4th for the capacitance measurements and 1 or 2 in the 4th decimal place in power factor.
So translate.
Shows us that's on the wire on the generator.
So here's another of their original research.
Ruthie, I have her cookbook.
And you have a cookbook?
It's a composition book
Oh,
in which
wow.
she has stapled or taped recipes, somewhere in
Wow.
the newspaper.
And she knew a lot of diplomats. They would bring her things from Asia, as well as this gown. This was always displayed beautifully in her entrance hallway in her apartment, 3901 North
304.
Connecticut
Avenue.
Avenue.
3901 Connecticut Avenue.
3901, yep. And near the National Zoo. We used to love to go there frequently. Just drop this down for now. Okay. Oh, here she was visiting us. I'm sorry about the fun fact slide in there. And that's Leah Zariah, my brother Michael. And again, Aunt Matilda was with us all the time. Now, I want to draw your attention to this piece, again, another piece of needlework, crocheting, granny squares. This was made by Leah Zariah Merritt Sparks' cousin, or sister, perhaps, Eloise Merritt, my family genealogist over there. We knew her as Aunt Wee. As a little girl, I always thought she must have been really small. But Wee was a nickname for Eloise. So, a God wink, an angel wink, whatever you want to call it, when my father was in hospice care, the chaplain came in to meet him. And she said, well, you know, tell me about yourself. Oh, I'm just an old farmer from Sparrows Point. And she's like, well, so was my grandfather. And he's like, well, what was the name? He says, Charlie Stengel. So, from Aunt Matilda's apartment, Dad, when they were cleaning it out, he and your father, he found this little thing. It was like a little paper clip, but it had Charles Stengel's initials on it. And he's like, well, that's a really sweet little thing. Nobody else is really going to want that. And he kept it as a money clip. So that moment, when she said she was related to Charles Stengel, he said, Ruth, get the money clip. And I reached down, he said, this is more yours than mine. Oh. I, as well, had a needlepoint fire screen that was made by Aunt Wee, and I had that person come over and take it home. Oh, that's nice. So that's what we call small Timor. It's a very small town. Aunt Matilda always visiting in Florida. This was her apartment, and my mom and dad visiting up here. There's this black and white photo. I think it's funny she had the Mona Lisa in there. And family lore. She was also supposedly a friend of Ansel Adams, the famed photographer of the West. So I'd like to think maybe that was, but one of it is, but I'm not sure. There it goes. So the 12th and 13th generation Todd women continue to honor these legacies. One way is that I love using things from the generations. This is a Todd teapot. They came over with this tray. It was made in 1786. It came over with an end table that's on display in the Todd room as a promise of marriage from one of the Todd gentlemen to, a friend of mine just stopped it, and to as an engagement. Please, you know, please marry me. Other things such as silver pieces. This was my mom's, a lettuce fork, and a spoon that was Leah Zariah Merritt's. Love this. Also, let's see. Todd women still love to shop. Hutzlers! That was a famous Baltimore shop. And here we are, some more of us, of the Todd women. This is the 13th generation. These are cousins. Now, second cousins, I guess you would say. Do they look alike? This is our niece Katie and her cousin Megan. The Todd gene is very strong. And those of us in the 12th and 13th generation are making lots of contributions to society, anywhere from the medical field to software engineers, librarians, attorneys, and especially family caregivers and civic and nonprofit leaders. And we look forward to seeing what the 14th generation and all the future ones here from Todd's Inheritance will be doing, and their ordinary lives and extraordinary accomplishments to come. So, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it so much. And again, please look for Todd's Inheritance HistoricSite.org. We'll always have upcoming events coming. And December 2nd, we have Historical Santa coming here, where the sleigh will be out front. It'll be all decorated for Christmas, as you saw there, and like Williamsburg, mini Williamsburg, and you'll have lots of photo ops again with.
And then in the afternoon, he'll give a talk on the history of Santa Claus, going all the way back to the original St. Nicholas.
Great.
Nicholas Todd Boggs.
Yes. Santa Claus is definitely a Todd. Yes. Thank you all. And I also I brought some treats. My mom was famous for her meringues. These are not her meringues, but you can get the idea. And lastly, I also have something I brought.
And her lemon bars.
In the cookbook, my grandmother Todds, Mary Melvina Sparks Todd, her cookbook, her recipe for her famous crab cakes were not included for some reason. So I ran them off, if you would like to take them home. Now, the best part about this, you have to have fresh parsley. It's very important.
Yes.
And she always would serve hers with drippings made from milk, with milk gravy. These days it's more broiling, but these are just the way things were. So please, if you'd like a copy, please enjoy. So thank you again all for coming tonight.